Okay, in this video, I want to talk about both skill sets and how the first one is extremely overlooked. I've noticed this in the last 4 years coaching my own boys in youth wrestling. I started them at 8 years old, and a lot of dads, a lot of coaches tend to look at strength and conditioning as an accessory, not a priority. And the reason being is they look at it as it just builds endurance and it builds better contractile function of the muscle tissue. What is extremely overlooked is the skill set you learn in the weight room. And this is probably the secret, the silver bullet of my boys' success, because in their age bracket, in their weight class, what I noticed out the gate was it was loaded with impressive wrestlers, what I would call all stars, elites. You know, and I had a handful of boys that were travelers that wrestled pretty much all year round and were stacking up experience. And I think, for example, this video that I'm going to use today, I'm not 100% positive, but I would say this kid, I bet on it. He's from Iowa. He traveled all the way to Tennessee for these national duels. That he fit this category of wrestler. Started wrestling when he was 5. It's probably, safe to say somewhere in the median area at least of 75 matches to upwards towards 150 matches a year of tournament experience. And that is one of the easiest no-brainer ways to give your wrestler an advantage, is just put them in a lot of tournaments, give them a lot of mat time. And it is also a necessity at some point. You need to get them enough mat time. There's a basic minimum for them to handle the situations live that they're going to see and feel in a match. And there's nothing that can replace that except experience. Okay, so here we are in their 4th season. This is Andrew. This is his opponent from Iowa. And I want to explain to you the importance of the first set of skills. We can call this general physical preparation, GPP. These are the skills, and I stress skills, that you learn in the weight room. Okay, you learn where to put your knees for maximum torque, maximum power, where to put your feet when you're squatting and deadlifting and cleaning. And the more you dial this in by the millimeter, the better your performance will be. And your performance includes the amount of strength you can produce throughout the entire match. So we're also talking about fatigue. If you're not making the proper shapes, and shapes are the positions that your skeleton is in throughout the movement that you're executing, whether it's a squat or a double leg takedown. If you're not executing the right shapes at all moments of the movement, you're bleeding torque, you're bleeding efficiency, you will fatigue faster than your opponent. You will not be as fast as your opponent. You will not be as strong as your opponent, who, if your opponent has spent time on both skill sets, wrestling and general physical preparation. Okay, these are fundamental movements. And these fundamental movements include it's just a handful, but they're just like wrestling movements. They can take a lifetime to master, or you can spend a lifetime mastering them. Proper squat technique, or elite squat technique, let's call it. Deadlift technique, clean and jerk, because these are all tried and true methods of lifting the largest load doing it quickly, and doing it efficiently. If you had an alien that was super smart, visit Earth first time, had no previous knowledge of the human body, and he examined the human body and the mechanics it can produce, and you ask the alien, based on the specifications of the human body, what is the best way to lift a weight overhead? And without any prior knowledge of the clean and jerk, the alien would come up with the clean and jerk. Okay, so if we master these fundamental movements, they're going to transfer to wrestling, and they're going to keep you from making movement errors that are often nuanced, that are setting you back and you don't realize it. Okay, so let's dive into this real quick, give you some real world examples. All right, what I noticed with this kid right away, and you can hear me screaming like a lunatic because this is my son and I'm definitely biased, but this is actually what you call a scientific observation. Is I'm watching his knee placement and his foot placement, okay, and I'm watching the shape of his core and the contortions that it makes throughout the match, and how far do these contortions deviate from good solid movement that you would see in a clean and jerk or a deadlift or a front squat. Okay, and also how you would actually teach the wrestling move. All right, I would not teach a child to step this far out and buckle his knee. These are called valgus knees, which he does throughout the entire match. All right, so his foot placement is not accurate. The person who deadlifts frequently and cleans frequently will put himself at the most balanced, torque-producing foot placement throughout the match. And you can watch. Toes deviate inward, knees deviate inward. And what I want you to see too, at the same time, because this boy is a phenomenal wrestler. He has a lot of wrestling experience, and he's relying solely on his wrestling skills. He's lacking the other set of skills. And that's super important because Andrew started when he was 8. And like I said earlier, I would bet he started when he was 5 and or has more wrestling matches than Andrew. Okay, and Andrew is able to close the gap because his skill set in the weight room is very high, where the skill set in the weight room of this boy is non-existent. And you can kind of see it if you have a trained eye in the musculature also. He has very flat, undeveloped muscles, and Andrew's are a little more developed. And look at the setup. Okay, a lifter would never pull his foot outside of his knee. A lifter just knows this is not good mechanics for the human body. You don't produce strength or balance this way. Okay, this foot should stay in. Later in the match, which is interesting, he intuitively corrected this foot placement and brought it in. All right, and then the elbow flare. Okay, that elbow is unnaturally high, or you could say naturally high. That's what he does naturally without really thinking about it. But if you spend a lot of time pressing and pulling with precision, with the best technique, externally and internally rotating your elbows at the right time, keeping your elbows at the right distance from your ribs, hitting full range of motion, staying on the center line when you press overhead, you'll start developing good elbow patterns in your wrestling match. All right, this elbow has to change direction, it has to move in order to function better than where it is right now, which will slow the wrestler down. Okay, so flared elbows, deviated foot patterns. And as I'm watching this kid move and line up, I'm piecing together the puzzle of his preparation. How prepared is this guy? How strong is this wrestler? And that dictates what I'm going to yell at my wrestler to try to give him any advantage that I can give my wrestler. So I'm watching the core. Notice how his lumbar pops. This is a weak, underdeveloped core. There's not much core strength here. And I would put a year's worth of paychecks betting that Andrew can deadlift more than this kid. And this kid cannot maintain posture during his 1 rep max. His core will bust. Okay. And proofs in the pudding. You can see it throughout the match. His core waffling. It's a wave. It's never a straight, solid line. And compare that to more seasoned wrestlers. Watch Kyle and Jordan here. Most of the time, it'll be a very strong curve without a sudden pop in the lumbar, without a grotesque pop. This is not a nice curve. There's more pop in the lumbar than there is the thoracic region. And you can see here, it's a very trained curve. You can actually stabilize this curve. Strongmen do it all the time when they lift Atlas stones. They stabilize here. So this is not necessarily a bad curve. And there's plenty of time spent by Kyle and Jordan with a perfectly straight posture, what you call a neutral core, and that's what you want at all times when you're lifting a heavy load. When they're just standing in the stance, it's okay. They can do a braced curve like that. But if you're doing a deadlift or clean, when you're lifting a heavy load, you want kettlebell, you want a neutral posture. And it's not just a safety reason or a nitpick by a strength coach. It's how the limbs, your posture dictates how well your limbs will move. For example, if you're completely hunched over, you're crunched, you can't lift your arms over your head. You have to straighten your posture in order to lift your arms over your head. The body does not perform at maximal strength or top speed with a compromised core. Okay, so you'll notice, and coaches will coach this, that you can be rounded out in certain positions, but when you hit a takedown, a single leg or a double leg, you need to get your hips under you. You need to posture up, and in order to get the most force and the most speed. So watch this scramble and watch the core. You can see while Kyle's driving Jordan off the mat, his core is straight, it's solid, it's braced. He has a neutral spine through this whole run because he's using all his power and his speed he can get right now to score 1 point. Get Jordan off the mat, and Jordan doesn't want to go. So this is going to be a maximal effort. When you hit a maximal effort and you're trying to get that much leg drive, you need a neutral core. Okay, and he's also pulling hard with this arm and with the other arm. If you want a strong pull, like you're doing a dumbbell row or bent over barbell row, or you're doing a sweep, you're actually pulling back with your arms during a deadlift and a clean. When the arms are straight, you're doing a sweep towards the shins. It's a backward angle. You can't do these movements, these pulling movements or pushing movements, with a compromised core. It has to be neutral to get the most out of your limbs, whether it's arms or legs. Okay, straight core. You'll never see a broken lumbar from these two throughout the entire match. Also, I want you to check out his knees. Look how he's bracing himself right now. His knees are not valgus, which means buckled in. And the way I look at it is inside the big toe. Wherever that big toe is pointing, the kneecap needs to point in the same direction. Okay, or you're compromised. You're not going to perform at your best. And also, all of these things that I'm talking about go hand in hand with safety. You'll save your knees, you'll save your back if you practice a neutral core all the time, or majority of the time. There's a few exceptions, like I said, with the Atlas stone. And you also practice knees out, okay, instead of knees inside the toe, what I called valgus, okay. Watch the knees, watch the core. Look at his knees, knees out, knee in line with the toe. Okay, dragging that foot, but the knee's still pointing outward in the same direction as the foot. And when he comes up, do the knees buckle in? You're not going to see that kind of knee movement from a high-level wrestler. Like this, knees buckled inward. And you'll see later on in the match, there's a point where right here, oh, I just caught it perfect. That's awesome. He's bent over holding his cramp. He's cramped up, he's exhausted, he's fatigued. And this wrestler over here is standing straight and tall with good posture, not worried about his engine, waiting for the kid to line up. I know from experience that if this kid moved more efficiently, if he had the other skill set, he would have lasted longer and he wouldn't be hurting at this point in the match. Notice how he lines up with a very rounded core every time. Knees are always deviating in. Straighter core, knees out. Andrew beat this kid with both skill sets. If this kid had the other skill set, if he had spent the same amount of time in the weight room as Andrew had, mastering the deadlift, the clean, the snatch, the front squat, also the presses, pushing and pulling, the upper body movements are crucial. He would be more efficient and would have lasted. And I think he would have beat Andrew, because I think this kid has significantly more wrestling experience. I want to show you quickly, and hopefully it's easy to see the benefits, the skills that you're actually learning. And we'll just use front squats as an example. When you go all the way down on any squat, the cues that I'm going to tell you and have you master is flat feet. You're going to have balanced feet. They're going to be about shoulder width apart. You're going to figure out on your own through thousands of repetitions where you generate the most force. What width do you like best down to the millimeter? Because everybody's hip girdle is different, has a different width, and has a different ball and socket, and everybody's hips play differently. Okay, and everybody has a different femur length when it comes to the leg and lower leg length. So everybody's squat is going to be slightly different. And it's important that you figure out and develop the highest level of proprioception to be an insanely accurate athlete under duress, under fatigue. Okay, you can do a perfect front squat when you're fresh. Can you do a perfect front squat when you're tired? Okay, because we're not just looking for that all-star that can do it when everything's perfect under a low heart rate. You need to, as a wrestler, be strong and accurate and fast under a high heart rate, under exhaustion, and you can train that. So flat, balanced feet, equal pressure from the heel to the toe throughout the whole squat, knees out, pointing in the same direction as the toe. The kneecap never deviates inside the big toe. Strong neutral posture. And one reason you have to have strong neutral posture is this load, this barbell, has to stay over the midfoot the whole way, up and down and up, in order to produce the most force, lift the heaviest load, and do it the fastest. Okay, and the front squat has the added benefit of front loading the shoulder girdle. So that's going to create really strong posture, stronger shoulders, stronger core, and you'll see it in the development of athletes' shoulders like we saw earlier when they're just standing here. You can see Andrew stands with very good posture, straight shoulders, and they're not rounded. And that's from all the pushing and pulling, the front squats, the overhead squats, retracting his shoulder blades continuously during certain movements where blades need to be retracted for optimal performance, like cleans, deadlifts, snatches, bench press. And then at the end of a row, barbell row, dumbbell row, his mid traps, his rhomboids are well developed and under control. And they're doing a movement pattern that he's repeated enough times to develop a neuronal map. Okay. What this kid lacks is a neuronal map for his posture. Because every movement you learn, from tying your shoes to brain surgery, if you're a surgeon, you develop a neuronal map for that's stored in your nervous system. That's why you can do it faster and faster and maintain precision, because that's the name of the game. I want you to, when you first learn a move like tying your shoes or a double leg takedown, we have to slow it down. We have to break it down. As soon as you go too fast, the wheels come off. And then as you learn it, you go faster and faster. Okay. The wheels are less likely to come off during a wrestling move if you already have foundational movement patterns stored in your neural maps. So each one of these checkpoints, shoulder width stance, these are excellent videos. Love these. Hands outside the shoulders, knees in line with the toes, elbows high, hips descend back and down. Every one of these checkpoints will show up in one shape, one form, or another in wrestling. You're like, oh, we never do front squats in a wrestling match, so why do I need to train front squats? Okay. Well, if you never do front squats, you won't strengthen, for example, the function of keeping those knees in the right place to develop the most torque when it comes to any squatting motion. When you shoot, when you're in your in the bottom position, that it's all fundamentally the same. It's ankle, knee, and hip flexion, ankle, knee, and hip extension. We need to do train the simultaneous use of these three joints to maintain position under the most duress possible. Okay, that way Kyle Dake running Jordan Burroughs out of bounds is a piece of cake, and it's not the worst thing he's ever done in his life. And now he's thoroughly exhausted and can't carry on. It needs to be effortless. Okay, and we all know, those who have wrestled, that that's kind of a joke, right? Because wrestling is hardly effortless. Keep that statement in mind as your driver for developing the heaviest front squat you can develop. And also taking a little bit lighter load and doing as many reps as you can, which is a load that other people still think is heavy. Okay, so build up your 1 rep max on your front squat. For example, I build mine up to 380, which is not a world record, but it's great for wrestling. Not many wrestlers can do 380. But also I want to make sure I can take like my 80% of that max and rep it for a higher rep range than anybody else can do. Okay, so that you know you can produce tremendous force under fatigue. That's just an example. I think that will do it for this one. Make sure you get in the gym. You're hitting your squats, lunges, deadlifts, clean snatches. your pushes and your pulls, bench press, shoulder press, dumbbell rows, pull-ups. All right, and also throw some sit-ups and toe to bar in there. You take that short list and you master that and you push it to the extreme, you'll have both skill sets and you will be separating yourself from the competition. That is the only reason, well, not the only reason, but is one of the biggest reasons my boys caught up to the elite wrestlers in 4 seasons. Was able to defeat them. Okay, please comment below, ask me questions. Be happy to make another video based on your questions. And like the video, subscribe. Talk to you later.